So it starts as most fairy stories start. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Little Red Riding Hood. And Little Red Riding Hood lived on the edge of a wood. She lived there in a cottage with her mum. And in the wood lived her granny. And every so often, her and her mum would take the path into the wood to her granny's house and hang out, watch some telly, maybe play some badminton in her granny's garden. It was fun, it was cool. Well, one day, Little Red Riding Hood was a bit bored, and she said to her mum, "Mum, can I go and see Granny?" Well, her mum was a bit busy doing the things that she wanted to do, and she said, "Oh, I'm a bit busy right now, can we go tomorrow?" And Little Red Riding Hood said, "Hey Mum, can I just go on my own? I know the path, and I won't stop to talk to anyone." Her mum sighed and said, "All right, fine. Let's pack a basket of tasty things for you to take to Granny's house, and make sure you don't stop on the way." So they packed a basket, they put in some tasty treats like apple pies and some apple juice, lots of appley good things. And Little Red Riding Hood set off along the path into the woods to her granny's house. Well, when she was walking along the path, she was able to do all the things she wasn't able to do when she was walking with her mum, like stop and look at some pretty flowers. So she stopped and looked at these pretty flowers. There were bluebells out, and she thought, "Hey, I think Granny might like some of these." So she started picking some. And then she wandered a bit further off the path to pick up some crocuses. And then suddenly she looked up because she felt like she was being watched. And there, behind a tree, she saw someone watching her. "Hello," she said. "Oh, hello," said the voice from behind the tree, and out stepped Mr. Wolf. "What's your name?" said Mr. Wolf. Little Red Riding Hood," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh, nice to meet you, Little Red Riding Hood. And where are you off to today, Little Red Riding Hood?" "My granny's house," said Little Red Riding Hood. She knew that she shouldn't be speaking to strangers, but she also thought, it'll be fine, yeah? Well, Mr. Wolf had spotted some daisies a bit further off the path and directed Little Red Riding Hood's attention to them. "Have you seen those daisies over there? Perhaps your granny would like those daisies." Little Red Riding Hood spotted them, said thanks, and skipped off to go pick those. Phew, she thought, got out of that one. Meanwhile, Mr. Wolf, who was actually quite a cunning and sly Mr. Wolf, raced along the path all the way to Granny's house, where he found the granny, tied her up, and put her in her own wardrobe. He then put on one of Granny's special nightcaps, so that it covered his bushy eyebrows, and turned down the lights a bit, so it was a bit darker in the room, and leapt into bed and pulled the covers up over his big chin. He waited for Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood, meanwhile, had finished picking her daisies, thought, "This is a pretty nice bouquet that I reckon my granny will like," and got back onto the path and headed to her granny's house. When she got there, the door was open ajar. "That's nice of Granny to welcome me in." She went in, the kitchen was empty. "Granny, Granny," she said. No answer. Strange. She left the bouquet of flowers on the kitchen table in some water, and she left the apple pie in the fridge with the apple juice, ready for when they wanted something to eat. And she decided maybe Granny's in her room. So she went up to Granny's bedroom. When she got into the bedroom, it was quite dark. "Granny?" she heard from the bed. "Granny, are you all right? Let me turn on the lights." No, said the voice. It sounded a bit husky. I'm feeling a bit sick," said the voice. "Okay. All right, shall I leave you then?" No, come sit next to me, dear," said the voice. Very husky voice, slightly familiar. She pulled up a stool and sat down a little bit nervously. Come closer, said the voice. So she moved the chair a bit forward. Looking at her granny in bed, she noticed a few things she hadn't ever seen before. "Granny, "What big eyes you've got," said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to see you with, my dear," said the wolf, who was pretending to be her granny. Little Red Riding Hood peered a bit closer. "Granny, what big ears you've got." "All the better to hear you with," replied the wolf, who was also leaning in a bit closer. "Granny, what big teeth you've got." "All the better to eat you with," yelled the wolf, and leapt out of the bed and gobbled Red Riding Hood up in one gulp. Now, in all this kerfuffle, the chair had been knocked over, the curtain had been ripped a bit, and Granny, the real Granny who was still in the wardrobe, was banging a bit louder. An axe cutter happened to be finishing his day's work and heard these strange noises coming from Granny's house in the wood. I better just check in and make sure everything's all right, he thought. So he plodded along, found the door open a bit, and went straight upstairs because it wasn't like Granny to leave the door open. "Hello?" he said as he pushed open the bedroom door. There he found the wolf, looking startled. It didn't take him a second. He chopped off the wolf's head in one swoop. And out popped Little Red Riding Hood. He lifted her out, there was so much gloop, and put her down on the side. "Little Red Riding Hood, what on earth? Where's your granny?" "I don't know," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Where is my granny?" They looked everywhere you can imagine, apart from the wardrobe, until suddenly they heard, the wardrobe. Phew. They opened the door, out rolled Granny, they untied her, and she crossed her arms and said to Little Red Riding Hood, "Did you just so happen to talk to a stranger on your way home?" "Yes," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I'm so sorry. I will never, ever, ever talk to a stranger ever again." Said Granny. "I don't think you will." And she gave her the biggest cuddle of her entire life. They then went downstairs, said thank you to the axe man, gave him some apple pie, and had a glass of apple juice. The end. I hope you've enjoyed this version of Little Red Riding Hood, and bye.